Totally Football Show today. Premier League Matchday 11. Big Dogs and Black Cats at one end of the table. Wolves out the back at the other. We round up all the weekend's headlines with Doku on Song for City and an epic ballad at the Stadium of Light. Are we having a title race then? Are Newcastle having a relegation scrap? Should Richarlison maybe keep his shirt on? These and other important matters coming up for discussion in today's Totally Football Show. Today's Totally Football Show being recorded on Sunday the 9th of November. Perhaps you're watching us live on YouTube. Hello, if you are. Maybe you're checking us out on a Monday or thereafter in podcast form. Wherever you're receiving this Totally Football Show, many thanks for joining us. We've got Daniel Storey on the big screen. Hello, Daniel.
Good evening, James.
You've had a nice weekend.
Yeah, I've seen Forest win for the first time since December 2023, so
right,
life can't be bad.
Indeed not. Tim Spiers is here. What's up? Was that the last time you saw Wolves win, Tim?
That already?
What?
Come on, Jimbo.
Okay. Sorry. I'll do better. Yeah. Nice to see you, though, eh?
You too.
Yeah. And Duncan Alexander.
Hello.
How did Wickham get on?
They won 4-1.
Oh, yeah.
So there's one WWFC that are performing to expectation.
Right, okay. The other one?
Being beleaguered Wolves, yeah.
Beleaguered Wolves, right. Beleaguered Wolves who are getting themselves a new manager. Can we get a hip hip hooray for Rob Edwards?
Not from me.
Oh, Tim.
I mean, fine. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
But why?
I'm just not very enthusiastic, really.
Oh.
Have you seen the table lately? Yeah, no, he's a good appointment for a championship team, which of course is what Wolves probably will be pretty soon. So, yeah, nice to have someone in post, and looking forward to seeing what he can do, Jimbo.
Good.
Yes, there we go. Yeah.
Lovely stuff. Duncan, you'll have enjoyed this weekend because it was a record-breaking one in the Premier League.
Aren't they all?
Yeah, I suppose they are. This one, though, had the unique quality of seeing the gap between the youngest and oldest player in a side being at its smallest ever. Daniel, do you know where?
I have
niche content. This is what I'm going...
No, I'm sure Duncan's got the answer, so let's not panic.
No, this came from Producer Charlie, actually. So Leeds, in their starting 11 today, the game that you watched, there was only 3 years, exactly 365 days times 3, whatever that is, but exactly 3 years between Leeds' oldest player and youngest, Joe Rodon and Brendan Aronson. That's the smallest gap ever between the youngest and oldest player in a Premier League starting 11. And Producer Charlie spotted that. Actually, I think he spotted it on Opta Joe's feed. So credit to Opta Joe. Excellent. Other details about this weekend which you might find more significant include the Matchday 11 results, which were as follows. Arsenal drew 2-2 away at Sunderland, which means we head into the international break with the Gunners still on top, but now only 4 points clear of Manchester City, and Sunderland staying fourth. City, for their part, bullied Liverpool at the Etihad on Sunday afternoon, winning that game 3-0. Liverpool dropping to 8 points now off the top. In fifth place are Spurs, who drew 2-2 with Man United. In third spot are Chelsea, who beat Wolves on Saturday afternoon. Elsewhere in Sunday's early games, Villa beat Bournemouth 4-0. Brentford won 3-1 against Newcastle. Palace and Brighton drew 0-0. And Nottingham Forest came from a goal down to beat Leeds, which leaves at 3-1 as well, which leaves them, Forest, just a point from safety. And with West Ham also winning 3-2 against Burnley on Saturday, and Fulham beaten 2-0 at Everton, there are now 5 teams down the bottom. Fulham, Leeds, Burnley, West Ham and Forest separated by just 2 points. And Newcastle only 1 point above them. Crikey. That's the situation then. The international break is on the way, but not until we've had a chat about what went on this weekend, beginning with the most recent game, Man City 3, Liverpool nothing. Hurrah. Is it a comms, Charlie? Is it?
Yeah, the Doku goal.
The Doku goal. Where you go with that one? Okay, yeah. Oh, and that was beautiful, says yeah. Ah. Jeremy Doku there. What a game he had. What a huge... Actually, I'll start this one again. Jeremy Doku there. Possibly Man City's most significant player at the Etihad this Sunday afternoon, although Konate maybe ran him close on that one. But a huge performance from Manchester City, who closed the gap on Arsenal to 4 points. And it never really looked in doubt. Daniel, were you able to see any of this on your way back from the City ground?
I was indeed, yeah. I was talking to some friends in normal real life, and the sort of overwhelming judgment seemed to be this looks like a title challenger against a mid-table team at home, in that Liverpool had their chances. We'll feel slightly aggrieved about Van Dijk's offside goal, I'm sure. We'll talk about that. But they were just bullied. You said it at the top of the show. City just looked like they were sweeping aside a team who were significantly worse than them, which is pretty bleak for Liverpool, really. They are now 8th, I think, in the Premier League. They look way off it again. And City were ruthless, I suppose, efficient. Could even have, they spent the last 20 minutes of the game doing what they do against mid-table teams often, which is just sort of passing the ball around and ticking the clock down and waiting for the game to finish. I thought Doku was absolutely phenomenal again. But I thought Nico O'Reilly was really good, both in shackling Salah for the most part and also getting forward, because Guardiola sort of picked that shape with tucked in advanced midfielders and asked the fullbacks to do quite a lot of work up and down. And O'Reilly was so good at it. He's an attacking midfielder who's 20 years old, and he looks like England's best left back at the moment.
Well, Bertram says Man City's fullbacks really dominated today. What do the panel think of Nico O'Reilly? And does he have a serious shout for an England start in the summer if he keeps playing like this? Yes, by the sound of it.
Yeah, I think he does. I mean, England are not in a great position with left backs at the moment. It's sort of, for the last 5 years, feels like that's always been the case. Since Luke Shaw, since sort of the Euros, the home Euros, when Luke Shaw was the guy. Lewis Hall isn't starting for Newcastle at the moment. Dan Burn isn't an England left back. I know he's played there. And O'Reilly is that natural left-footed player who can do both. He can get forward, he can get back. Positionally, he looks really good, which is exactly what he'll learn under Guardiola anyway. And yeah, he looks absolutely fit for purpose at the moment.
Crikey. Liverpool as close to the bottom three as they are to the top of the table now, all of a sudden, or following a sustained period of losses. More interesting numbers for them. They're below Man United. And Duncan, you were pointing out, they've actually lost more games than Everton this season.
Yeah, they have. I mean, it's just, even have their record of 6 wins, 0 draws, 5 defeats is kind of testament to the sort of Jekyll and Hyde season they're having, really.
As we head into this international break, which part of the team, the misfiring attack, the wobbly back line, the bit in between, which part of the team will be most on Slot's mind?
I think the defence. I think none of the defenders even today, at least, covered themselves with glory. I mean, Bradley did okay, I thought, against a very tricky Jeremy Doku, as we discussed. But it was clear that they wanted Konate City to have the ball, and he didn't do much with it. A lot of the game was him sort of stood looking forwards with the ball and then passing it back to Mamardashvili, whose distribution isn't great, and then it was just the ball back to City. Weirdly, Liverpool had slightly more possession, but it didn't really feel like that.
Right. I think the Liverpool player with the most touches for a long while was Konate, because City's tactics was to load up on Van Dijk so that the Liverpool play would come out through Konate, who they felt they could get at, which seems a bit harsh.
Well, it was brutal. I mean, you and Daniel have both said the word bullying, and that's how it felt with him in particular. Yeah, from sort of goal kicks or any time Donnarumma had the ball, City would mark every other Liverpool player except for Konate, who had like 30 sort of yards of space around him. And they had no choice but to give it him. It was pretty smart. And yeah, he wasn't very good at progressing the ball at all. And he had a poor game defensively. I mean, he gave away the penalty when he had no business getting involved with Bradley, who was doing a good job on Doku, sort of shepherding the ball. And then in comes Konate with this sort of bumbling sort of kick and then rebound. And then that leads to the penalty. And then obviously that was saved, but then for the first goal, he gets beaten in the air so easily by Haaland. So you look at him and Mamardashvili for the penalty that's given away and for the goal that's conceded, because I think Mamardashvili was just sort of stuck, wasn't he, when Haaland headed it?
Right, with the header, yeah.
Yeah, and they've both been weak links for a little while now. It's maybe a bit harsh to call Mamardashvili a weak link. He's coming in as a backup keeper. I don't think he speaks very good English. He's sort of, it's his first time he's been thrust into it more than he would have expected to be in this season.
I expect he understands the phrase "man on" by now.
Yeah, but he's definitely a step down from Alisson, and I think that shows. I think there's a direct correlation between Liverpool's form and him coming into the team, and a lack of confidence in him. And Konate's just been poor all season long. And there are so many weak links in this Liverpool team. I think someone said earlier that they'll have the international break as a sort of a reset. What can they do in the next 2 weeks? There are so many players not performing, from the keeper upwards all the way up to Salah. And Duncan says Jekyll and Hyde, I mean, yes, in terms of results, but not in terms of performances. It's been mixed all season, and today was the nadir, really. And it's the first time where they've been completely out for all over the pitch. And that makes me kind of think it's what's going on behind the scenes, because they weren't fighting.
What's
today.
going on behind the scenes?
I don't know if it's issues with the players that they brought in and the imbalance of the squad, issues with Salah and the sort of tantrums that he's having, if there's sort of issues in the dressing room. It's very hard to tell. It's a pretty well-run dressing room. We saw that last year when they managed to negate the challenge of a new manager coming in and steam to the title. So I don't know. That's a great question, but there's something wrong.
I mean, their decisions this year have been to give Salah and Van Dijk big new contracts, to bring in Florian Wirtz and Alexander Isak for a lot of money, and obviously other players as well, like Frimpong and Kirkes, who haven't hit the ground running. So it's almost like pretty much every decision they've made hasn't really worked so far. And that's not to say it won't. I mean, look at someone like Jeremy Doku, who's been at City a while now, started very well, then faded, struggled to get in the team. But so, players do take time to get going. But yeah, I mean, you said where would Slot worry about going into the international break? Kind of everywhere, really. Yeah.
And then the one signing that did work, Ekitike, he gets dropped for Isak after a few weeks for no reason whatsoever, really. I know he's back in the team.
And hasn't been quite the same since. So.
Yeah, exactly. So it's far too early to say that he's lost the dressing room. Right. But,
Tim's saying it.
Well, has he?
Get in first, Tim. Kick that one off. Good for you. Daniel, how good was City's opening goal?
Yeah, I mean, just absolutely brilliant. I mean, Haaland obviously misses the penalty, but it was a weird header in that it looked like he tried to offer it, almost like it had hit him by mistake, and yet his head is so hard that it generated enough power to fly in the top corner. So it's like an accident.
It comes off Konate, no?
Sort of brushes Konate.
Yeah, it does. But so he's expecting, I think, Konate to actually win the ball and clear it. So he sort of ducks his head, but he ducks his head in such a way that the ball strikes it perfectly on the forehead and goes in.
Right. It was the bit before that, it was the extended period of, 20 passes or so, and I don't know how many minutes worth of possession.
And I think, Guardiola's been at pains to say this an awful lot recently. When O'Reilly scored the goal in midweek, it was all about Phil Foden. He was kind of championing Phil Foden, blowing kisses to Phil Foden on the pitch. And I think having him more central, I know Thomas Tuchel in the week says, I see Foden centrally. And doing that system with the fullbacks pushing high to offer the width, it means that when Doku drives, he's driving at goal, not out wide. And it means that Foden is getting the ball in those spaces. And we know that when he's at it, City can play those triangles. It doesn't really matter who the other two players are, because Foden's touch and move is so good that they can create space and pull people out of position. And pull far better teams than Liverpool at the moment out of position.
Mm. Liverpool did save that penalty, Mamardashvili, who we were a little bit critical of there, but great penalty save from him. I was intrigued to read that no goalkeeper has saved more penalties in Europe's Big Five leagues in the last 2 and a bit seasons than Georgi Mamardashvili. For all that they were bullied by City, there was that moment early on when it looked like Virgil van Dijk had headed them level. Daniel, you were suggesting this was controversial. It was called back because of an active offside on Andy Robertson.
Yeah,
what was your issue with that?
It's one of those, and I get it with handball as well, where by the rules I can perfectly believe that is offside. But in a world pre-VAR, that land of milk and honey, I just don't think we'd really talk about it. I don't think it would have been that controversial. I think because everybody knows VAR exists. Then Donnarumma kind of makes a massive song and dance of it and points at Robertson. Obviously, they'd have looked at it anyway. But it just felt a bit like morally, which is too big a word to use for football, but morally it felt like it probably should have been a goal to me. It wasn't wildly controversial. I just thought it was a goal. I didn't think that Robertson was... I didn't think he was enough in Donnarumma's eye line. I thought there was actually a City defender blocking Donnarumma's view far more than Robertson was. So, yeah, I thought it was a bit unfortunate. But they didn't deserve anything better.
The strange thing was that it wasn't VAR that called it. It was the linesman that flagged it. But he flagged really late because Van Dijk had celebrated for, 20 seconds. And then suddenly you heard a big roar from the City fans. So, yeah, I think that was the kind of element. It's a bit like, well, if you thought it was offside, why didn't you flag straight away? But who knows? Who knows?
Shout out to the fact that City remain the only team in the Premier League yet to score a goal that wasn't from open play. Thanks to that Mamardashvili save on Erling Haaland, of course. Anyway, 4 points now. City behind Arsenal, who will spend the next fortnight nervously checking over their shoulder. This follows Arsenal's winning streak coming to an end, and indeed run of clean sheets ending with their trip to the Stadium of Light. We said, could the Black Cats do it? Or could Arsenal be the first team to win there? But no, a remarkable performance from Reggie Lebris's side. Rich writes in to say, will the pod stop comparing Sunderland to Hull 08-09 and give the team and management the credit they deserve? All right, well, we'll try that then.
I mean, I was just remembering stuff. That's kind of what we do.
Okay, but if they're not Hull, according to Rich at least, who are they?
They may be Sunderland 99-2000. So that may be the Scooby-Doo mask reveal, and it's Kevin Phillips without hair then, and now he's got lots of hair.
I mean, it's happened. So but tell me more.
About the game on Saturday?
Well, they are. Who are Sunderland, Tim?
They are a team that pretty much every football fan would want their team to look like, I think, or play. Just in terms of like that sort of all-encompassing sort of attitude, their attitude to attack, their fearless attitude to take on any opposition, their attitude to defending is just outstanding. They defend like every game's a sort of a cup final, but also they attack like they are defending a cup final lead. Bear with me, but for the equaliser, the way that it's Ballard who sort of hooks it on, isn't it? And then it's Brobby who hooks it in. And that's they were sort of like defensive movements, you know what I mean? Like they're both trying to clear the ball. They're just throwing themselves at it, literally, and sort of literally forcing an equaliser in the last minute. And then when Ballard then with his block at the other end, it's absolutely outstanding. It's the epitome of commitment. And the way, with the crowd on them as well, it's intoxicating. Like, it's great fun.
They pulled out all the stops. We tried to find all the details to win the game, said manager Regis Lebris, including moving the advertising hoardings, Daniel, closer to the pitch.
That felt an odd one in that Arsenal don't really score from long throws. They score from corners. So they should have sort of put the advertising boardings really close to the corners of the quadrant and done it that way. The other thing they're really good at, and this is exactly backs up what Tim was saying about a team you'd like to support yourself, is that they fight until the last minute. So in the playoff campaign last season, Reggie Lebris made this big thing of till the end, we fight till the end. And they scored in the 88th minute of the first leg of the semi, the 123rd minute of the second leg, and then the 96th minute of the final. And this season already, they've got 5 points in second half stoppage time. Normally, we kind of expect promoted clubs, particularly when they're drawing games, they've won 2 games in the last minute. You kind of expect them to sort of be happy with a point or to play out games or maybe even look tired at the end of matches. But it's none of that. They really do fight until the end. And I think the Stadium Light helps as well. That I went there early in the season. The noise is like nothing else. It's huge. It's like most places in the northeast when it's full, but it's huge, and it does demand that they kind of fight on. And the team is just reflective of that crowd. And I think when that happens, you can create something that sort of feels bigger than itself.
Sunderland have scored more goals in the 90th minute or after than any other Premier League team this season, including that winner against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge earlier on this month. It was Ballard, the former Arsenal Academy defender, who never actually featured for the Gunners. who gave the home team a half-time lead, ending that run of over 13 hours for David Raya without conceding. Arsenal then came back, Saka and that rocket from Leandro Trossard before in the 94th minute, Brian Brobby hooked in. I feel that doesn't do justice to the athleticism of his feet.
Well,
Swept in.
Tim claims it was a hook, and I'm not.
I mean, it was a hook.
But, in the movement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think hook's fine.
Yeah.
Hook.
I mean, it was a hook. It just, when people say, perhaps it's the hook or by, we're going down a tangent here. I feel like if you say volleyed, or which it wasn't strictly, well, maybe it was even a volley.
Captain Hook or Ian Crook.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I feel like we shouldn't go overboard on this result in terms of Arsenal, though. I mean,
why not?
Well, they were very, very close to recording what everyone would have then called the champions-elect style comeback win at a difficult place to go. I thought they played pretty poorly in the first half, but really well in the second.
Right.
For a team that never creates open play XG, they created quite a lot of open play XG in that game. And I think probably the biggest disappointment for Arsenal was Eze. Maybe that was the sort of game he was brought in to break down opposition, the lowest of low blocks, and he didn't really do that much. But I thought Trossard, who has been probably Arsenal's most consistent performer this season, was good, and Saka popped up as well. So I mean, did we think Arsenal were going to win every game this season? No. Did we think City were probably the second best team? Yes, and that's kind of how this weekend has panned out.
Daniel, do we think that European sides are going to be fearing visits to the Stadium of Light next season?
There's a long way left. I think Duncan probably knows more about this than me, but the numbers suggest a fairly significant overperformance. I'm not sure if scoring so many late goals is always sustainable, but it sort of feels a bit uncharitable to talk about that stuff, right? I mean, if you'd have offered any Sunderland fan, or if you'd have offered them 19th in the Premier League before the playoff campaign, they'd have taken it. So they would have taken 17th at the start of the season, and they are not going to be anywhere near that, I don't think. I think there'll probably be a regression to the mean, as there kind of was with Forest last season, and Bournemouth have had it as well. Brighton. There is just a sense that over no, I won't say whole. And the other thing to mention on that, it's a bit away, but they've got a fairly large contingent of AFCON players who are going to leave in January for a number of games, which will test the strength of the squad. And the other thing is we haven't really seen them when the chips are down yet, because they've been pretty much good from minute one. But that we kind of don't really need to talk about that. They'll just ride that wave for as long as they can.
In the meantime, they are the team that ended when nobody else seemed able to. Arsenal's winning run and scored a goal against them. So pretty good stuff from Sunderland. In third, 6 points back from Arsenal, are Chelsea, who beat Wolves 3-0 on Saturday. Should Chelsea be in this title race conversation? Nobody thinks they should. Why is that?
Well, you need a decent goal scorer. I think without Cole Palmer, do they have anyone who's consistently going to score throughout the season? And a dodgy keeper. You can't win the title with that keeper. Sorry.
I mean, you do need a goalkeeper. I think that's a bit harsh on Robert Sanchez. I think he's been better this season than previous.
But it's a pretty low bar. He's still not good enough.
Okay. The goal scoring, I'm not sure when Cole Palmer's due back, but 3 goals in this game, and they are capable of scoring without him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just think João Pedro hasn't quite kicked on from his early season form. He went through this ridiculous run of having no shots on target for like 5-6 games. And Liam Delap, obviously, back from injury now, but then suspended. So, I just think the squad's also a little bit too young. Would defy convention if they were going to win the title with that younger squad. But, I'm enthused and excited by them. Estevao continues to do something brilliant pretty much every week, even if he doesn't start. Albeit, the opposition were absolutely woeful. And anyone would beat anyone would beat them right now, even the other WWFC.
That Wolves squad, Tim, you were suggesting that you don't think it makes any difference who comes in and takes charge at this point.
Oh, I mean, there's a team in there. There's a team in there that can finish sort of 16th, 17th. There is.
Is there?
Yeah, there is. But Vitor Pereira's had a shocker, really. 10 games, 31 changes to his lineup, 5 captains and 3 different formations. They've got Brazil's midfield, for F's sake, in João Gomez and Andre. and a guy who scored 14 goals last season in Jürgen Strand-Larsen, and a decent keeper and some decent defenders. They should be doing better than they are.
And to Daniel's point about Sunderland's underlying numbers, Wolves, as we said on Thursday, are actually better than they. So I do think there is potential for them to go on a run. The problem is that they are, wildly adrift already.
8 points back. They've got 2 points after 11 games, which puts them on track to get 7 points at the end of the season.
Well, we all know that Derby never get beaten, so they're going to get at least 12. But
never say never.
This is true. It doesn't happen. We've proved it with science. And Rob Edwards, the last manager to mastermind the team scoring 3 goals against Arsenal in the Premier League. So he's got pedigree.
It's certainly a controversial switch. Middlesbrough were very unhappy with Wolves' conduct, and fans furious with Edwards for leaving them sort of 6 months into a 3-year contract, rightly so. I totally get it. I also get it from his point of view. Wolves are probably the club that's sort of closest to his heart out of any other club. And this is, if the chance comes up to take the job, plus you're on more money, plus it's a Premier League job, plus there's no guarantee of promotion with Middlesbrough. I get it from his point of view as well, but there's a huge job to do there, obviously.
Took over at Borough in the summer. They're currently second in the Championship, I think. Is that right? Or third?
Yeah.
Third. Second.
Yeah,
Second.
Currently second in the Championship. Oh, Saturday in the Championship, Stoke and Coventry went head-to-head. That was Mark Robbins up against the club that replaced him with Frank Lampard. And he was looking for revenge. He didn't get it. Super Frankie's side beat Stoke 1-0 in the Potteries with a long throw. Oh, that must sting.
When in Rome.
Well, indeed. Now, we don't know who Middlesbrough are going to have as their new manager yet, I don't think. And anyway, we've got other things to discuss. So next up, let's talk about, Nottingham Forest Leeds and the relegation picture. Dum, dum, dum. What a lovely first part. Do, 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 do. Right. Good Lord, I thought it was me for a second. Hold on a second. There we go. Right. Dum, 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 dum. Right. Hello to you if you're watching on YouTube. Like, for example, Floor Mat, who suggested Tim Spiers is looking like a modern Eminem.
As opposed to the ancient Eminem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He stoppeth 1 in 3. Do you know that almost 1 in 5 million... No, hang on, that's not right. Almost 5 million. Almost 5 million. I'll start again. Did you know that almost 5 million people in the United Kingdom consumed pirated sports coverage during the past 6 months? Who are these people? That fact and many other startling bits of information are revealed in a new documentary from The Athletic FC with Adam Leventhal entitled The Underground World of Illegal Streaming. That podcast is out right now. I'm not illegal streamed, so I wasn't able to watch Everton Fulham or West Ham Burnley on Saturday. And Tim and I were with you. I can tell you, though, that they finished Everton 2, Fulham nothing, and West Ham 3, Burnley 2, which, with the other results, not least Nottingham Forest stirring comeback win against Leeds on Sunday afternoon, have, as I mentioned earlier on, left things pretty interesting in that relegation battle. Assuming that Wolves are a substantial gap away from everybody else, next 5 teams separated by just 2 points, and Newcastle only a point better off, yada, yada, yada. But Daniel, let's not talk about the relegation scrap, because that's in your rearview mirror, you Forest fan, you.
I mean, Sunday was absolutely massive. It felt too big before the game, and in the first 30 minutes, the City ground was pretty not tetchy, but it was very anxious. I mean, the game's... Sorry, go on, James.
No, yeah, I was going to say, you went back... Well, first there was an extraordinary save from the Leeds keeper, and then they took the lead.
Yeah, I think, actually, the save, if it had gone in, would have been ruled out for offside, although Lucas Perry didn't know that, and it was a phenomenal reaction to move his body. And yeah, the game's defining moment was Forest equalising very quickly after Leeds' first goal, basically, because Forest got robbed. We've talked on this show before about Leeds' basically the only way of creating chances is through defensive actions. So nicking the ball high up the pitch. It's exactly what they did. The ball falls for Lucas Nemecha. It was a really nice step over and finish. And then the City ground would have got really tetchy if Forest had slogged their way after that. But Ibrahim Sangare scored, I think 2 minutes and 15 seconds between the two goals. I actually think Perry was at fault for the goal because he gets a really good hand to the cross, but rather than it being a fist that is directed out of the area, he just sort of flaps it to the feet of Sangare, who composed finish. And then the other change in game was on about 55, 60 minutes when Sean Dyche introduced Amari Hutchinson and Forest played with two wingers. And they just looked a completely different team with two wingers on the pitch. So until then, Nico Dominguez, who was a central midfielder, was playing left wing. And it was a bit stodgy. Forest looked like they couldn't really create chances in open play. It was quite a direct game. It was a really poor game, actually, although there had been 2 goals. And Hutchinson ran the show. After the game, Forest did a kind of poll on their Twitter feed or their X feed for man of the match. And Hutchinson won with 63% of the votes against the 3 others, which, given that he only played 30 minutes, is pretty extraordinary. But there was no other possible end result to that. He literally created the first goal, literally created Forest's second goal, and then was fouled for the penalty after beating his man for the third in or near stoppage time for Elliot Anderson to score the penalty. And there were signs there that if Forest play 2 wingers and quite a physical striker, which is exactly what Dyche did at Burnley and Everton, then they'll be okay. He probably now does need to do that. He probably needs to play with 2 wingers rather than just one. And yeah, things look promising again. They would have looked pretty bleak if Forest had lost the game because Leeds would have been well clear. Forest would have been closer to Wolves than anyone above them. And now there are signs of life. And you kind of look back in hindsight now and think, well, he's had 5 games and he's taken 8 points from Manchester United, Porto, Bournemouth and Leeds. And that's okay now. That's more than par for the course. There's a good feeling around the City ground again. It's quite funny at the end of the game. They've obviously got Dyche, they've got Stone, they've got Wone in the dugout, and they kind of sing their names. They sing they've got no hair, they sing that they don't care, and they sing that they're going to Istanbul for the Europa League final. It was very much not that kind of chanting when Ange Postecoglou was in charge. So yeah, night and day.
All right then. And particularly for Omari Hutchinson, the club's record signing, who famously wasn't even included in the Europa League squad at the start of the season. Is he the big beneficiary of Sean Dyche's arrival?
He certainly looks it. I would have said no 2 hours ago when he was left out the team again, but he certainly is now. It's an odd one. But the one thing we should say with the number of signings that have not really settled is that at full time, Hutchinson comes off the pitch and Callum Hudson-Odoi, who's injured today, is there and lifts him up his feet and gives him a hug. Ola Aina is there to hug every player coming off the pitch. It doesn't look like a squad that is in the relegation zone in terms of morale. I remember those first 2 seasons when Forest were sort of fighting for their lives, and it was like that. It was a kind of slightly doomsday atmosphere around the place because Forest was scrapping. It feels a little bit different now that Dyche has come in and there's been a move in the right direction. It's not pretty. I mean, it's almost literally the opposite football to what Andrew is trying to play. But for the situation they're in, it makes a lot more sense. And the work off the ball today was great. I would say, Tim said this about Chelsea earlier and was right too. Leeds were absolutely dire. They looked really, really poor. It's similar to Konate actually, in that you just give one of their central defenders the ball in a load of space, mark everybody else and wait for them to either play it across or back to the goalkeeper or just launch it forward and back yourself to win the header. There's just no creativity in open play at all. And it's really, really harming them. They're quite an easy team to play against at home, I think. And Forest were actually guilty of not really trying to win the game in the first half. And as soon as they did try and win it, they did.
Leeds now a point off the drop. A point ahead of Burnley and West Ham. Forest a point behind them. So Forest still in 19th spot. Is Farke in any danger going into this international break? Tim, and who do you think is in most trouble of the group? Wolves, obviously, in a world of pain. We'll see what happens with Rob Edwards. But then you've got Forest, West Ham, Burnley, Leeds, Fulham. And if you want to be controversial, Newcastle too. Who do you think the other 2 look most likely being at the moment?
I think, you say about nervously looking over your shoulder in the international break. I think Leeds and Burnley in 16th and 17th would see a resurgent Forest and a resurgent West Ham, both looking to revert to the mean. I mean, West Ham won 2 in a row, scored 3 in both games. Looked like Nuno's turned the corner. Forest, in this weird Premier League table where Spurs are being booed in 5th, but Forest are happy in 19th. They're on an upward trajectory. I think Newcastle will pull their way out of it. You're looking at Fulham, Leeds, and Burnley as the early scrap, I think, to avoid joining Wolves.
Fulham, Duncan.
Yeah, I think if you look at sort of fan sentiment at the moment, I think Fulham fans and Newcastle fans are particularly cross because I think, in different ways, the last season or two, they've both kind of established themselves at new levels. And it feels at both teams, I think, that they've really regressed this season. The international break is always. I think November's got the most managerial departures of any month in Premier League history. So it is. This one is the sort of the last chance saloon if you're a sort of club director in terms of get someone in, they can assess the squad, and then obviously the transfer window opens in 6-7 weeks. So I would say there's going to be a change in the next 2 weeks.
But where? Because this is quite rare. There's not been too much chatter heading into this break.
I think Leeds are probably the one that you'd think. But I think, I don't think it's going to happen at Newcastle, but the anger there is growing. And obviously the last time they got into the Champions League, their league form completely collapsed, and it's kind of repeating itself.
I think you'd also say with Marco Silva, maybe not right now, but his job looks very fragile. He's out of contract at the end of the season. I think he's been there, I think it's his 5th year now. And you look at just how he wasn't backed in the summer. Kevin was sort of their only major signing, but nobody else. And they're drifting. They're absolutely drifting. They've beaten the teams at home that you would expect them to beat, Wolves, Leeds and Brentford. Other than that, they're not producing anything unexpected. They're losing games pretty meekly. And they're just totally drifting. I
saw them play Wickham in the Carabao Cup, and they named a pretty strong team, and they weren't that impressive in that game. And like you say, Silva, I think he's out of contract to the end of the year. Kind of feels like he's just, like you say, drifting, isn't he?
But that's not a good combination. A manager out of contract at the end of the year and a team sort of heading towards the bottom 3 and not knowing what their futures are and what his future is either.
Yikes!
But they do have a swimming pool in the stand, so swings and roundabouts.
Swings and roundabouts. They have those as well. No, not yet.
Slide? Probably.
Very shortly we will. That's what they're on. Very shortly we will find out what happened to Newcastle, who met a team called Brentford on Sunday. We'll check on that. The other 2 o'clocks on this 9th of November and more, including that crazy finale in the Spurs-Man United game too. Anyway, lots to come on this Totally Football Show. Bum, 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 bum. Bosh. Bingity, bingity, bong. Totally Football Show European edition is out first thing on Tuesday, reacting to all the weekend's action across the continent, as you'd expect. Possibly the headline there, Bayern Munich. Did they make it 17 wins out of 17? No. Fresh from doing Paris Saint-Germain midweek, they very nearly lost at Union Berlin. Harry Kane, though, popping up in stoppage time to rescue a point for Vincent Kompany's side. We'll hear more about that. Incredible Luis Diaz goal. Other stuff too, with James, Jules, and Seb and Paul. Oh, and I think we might have a word on the Eredivisie. Anyway, what we're here to talk about right now are Sunday lunchtimes games, which featured goals galore, except for in the one that Duncan and I were watching. 4 goals, for example, at the G-Tech, where the Bees, aka Brentford, came from behind to secure their 5th win in their last 7 in all competitions. Let's hear more. Joining us now live from the Steam Packet, just down the road from the G-Tech, is Billy Grant of the Beesotted Podcast. Billy, what extraordinary scenes, once again. The Bees' 5th win in the last 7 matches at all competitions. What a season this is turning into.
Mate, I tell you something. What a season! You just never. I wouldn't say you never know what you're going to get from Brentford, but you kind of do, because we don't do things like anybody else does. And, we started this season, a lot of people would have thought in turmoil, as they say, in turmoil. Our manager, Thomas Frank leaves. He literally steals 4 or 5 of our top backroom staff, people that he hasn't even bought himself. Brentford found them, but he took them with him. And then, and then we got Keith Andrews in, which everyone was joking about being the set piece coach. They're going, Brentford have employed the set piece coach. You know what I'm saying? So you've got that narrative running through as well. Then also we've got Brian and Boomo leaving, who we knew was going to leave anyway. So Brian, we knew he was going to go, and Brentford fans are used to this. So we embraced ourselves for it. We were fine with that. And I could tell you this for a fact, was never lined up to leave Brentford, which really threw us out, you know what I'm saying? And it really disrupted our season. So when we came into the start of this season, 2 of our top strikers, 40 goals down, we were a little bit worried. We played Forest in that first game of the season. We were terrible, you know what I'm saying? But to be fair, we completely turned it around. At home, we're great. Away from home, could do better, as they say. But listen, it's been a brilliant season. Thiago has been a revelation. He got injured in his first game against AFC Wimbledon last season, pre-season friendly, played 30 minutes, hadn't seen him for a year, but he's come back and he's just so happy to be there. And we're happy for him to be there too.
The recruitment's amazing, Billy. Not just in playing times, but also whoever took the decision to promote Keith Andrews.
Yeah, I mean, we get, quite a lot of, people talking to us on the media and everything like that. And they said, what do you think of Keith Andrews? And we're just like, I'm not being funny. We've got no idea. We've got no idea. However, if Brentford have made the decision to bring him on board, and we're not rose-tinted glasses, our owner, Matthew Benham, really clever bloke. He runs a tech company. He's done really well, really good in business. He's not going to go employ somebody to save himself like 50 quid, you know what I'm saying, if he doesn't think he's going to do the job. And Brentford would have done their due diligence, said, listen, we pulled you in, Keith, from doing coaching. We're going to give you a job. They gave him a job, said, how about being a set-piece coach? We'll teach you. They taught him for a year and they watched him for a year. And they obviously decided, tell you something, we like what you do. From what I can understand, he's really good with the players. The players love him. Also, he comes out with these sort of really out the box, like, just different ideas, which is, they say, is quite refreshing. So I think it's been a real change for Brentford. So what they saw it, instead of Thomas Frank leaving, saying this is a disaster, they're saying this is an opportunity for us to change things up and take it to another level, just do things differently. And the fact is that he's still green and he admits, they make mistakes. We've got new players in there still bedding in. Give them a year, as Brentford do, a year and a bit, when they're actually sort of done their business. I mean, it's going to be really, really exciting for us. And we've still got money in the pot. We've still got to spend the Weiser money. We've still got to spend some of the Ivan Toney money as well. So, listen, and for Brentford, you could probably get about 17 players for that as well, because you know how we run.
Keith Andrews wasn't the only name that raised some eyebrows at the start of this season. Jordan Henderson coming in was another one that people had mixed views on. How's he been for you?
Jordan's been brilliant. He's been absolutely brilliant. Listen, he plays for England captain, but also the thing is that he's such a professional. Where he's been really good also for Brentford is actually teaching the younger players out there and sort of kind of guiding them, but also the other players, the sort of experienced players are in there as well. He's been really helping them. He's not our captain, but if you look at him, I mean, you look at him today when technically there should have been a penalty, when the penalty was given and Atwell was all over the place and there was a furore for about 11 minutes before the penalty was taken. He was right in the middle there, just basically because it's kind of doing his job. If Jordan Henderson carries on, to be quite honest with you, he could be in the coaching staff. And if Keith Andrews gets poached by Liverpool or, Tottenham again in 2 years' time, he could be the next Brentford manager. So he's a brilliant person to have in the mixer.
Excellent. You've been brilliant for us, Billy. Thank you so much. Enjoy your evening and look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thanks for having me on. Thank you very much.
Billy Grant from the Beesotted Podcast, who was literally buzzing there about that victory. Newcastle took the lead somewhat against the run of play in this game, but Bees, the better side all the way through. This was a game that we were all watching other matches at the same time, but broadly speaking, why is it that a side like Newcastle, dominant in the Champions League, so dominant at home, can't do it away from home? Why is it, Daniel?
I think they're stuck in a rut, and if Eddie Howe has a weakness as a manager, I think he's probably slightly too slow to change things. He's sort of a trust the process guy, right? He doesn't. I don't think he particularly likes dropping players. That harmony within the squad is massive for him, and I think there are underperforming players in the team. The other thing is that Newcastle are, to my mind, a kind of big game team in that everything comes from the intensity and the energy of that midfield. And sometimes at home, when the crowd are whipping them up, or in the Champions League where they're not that used to being, everyone seems up for it. I've watched them 3 times away this season, and they haven't looked up for it in any of those games. They're quite easy to pass through. They're quite easy to kind of knock off the ball and harry and bully a bit. They look a bit, I don't know, they just look a bit flimsy as a team. Joe Ellington's struggling, Dan Burn's struggling, and you'd survey 100 Newcastle fans, family fortune style, and they're all crying out for Aaron Ramsdale to start in goal because Nick Pope's been pretty dreadful recently, for Lewis Hall to start as left back because they really love him and he's a really good player, and Dan Burn is lots of things, but he isn't a left back, and they want to see more energy in midfield. He has finally kind of gone with a meritocracy with his wingers. So Harvey Barnes and Jacob Murphy are Newcastle's 2 best wingers. Anthony Gordon's been poor for nearly 18 months now, and Anthony Elanga has taken time to settle, and neither of those two have contributed a goal or assist this season. But there's only so often that you can kind of rely on those overperformance of players, and others need to step up. And yeah, it doesn't look good. I'm not saying he's under the pressure, but he would be if Newcastle weren't doing so well in the Champions League and the EFL Cup.
All right, well, a international break for them to consider all of that. No Dan Burn when they return because he got sent off in this game. Joe Ellington and Nick Pope both picking up injuries in the Brentford match, so don't know whether they'll be available when Newcastle return. Sunday afternoon, Tim, you were meanwhile watching the Villa-Bournemouth game. Sorry. The Villa-Bournemouth game, which also featured 4 goals, but they were all for Villa.
Yeah, it was a bit of a mad scoreline, actually. It was not a 4-0 game by any means. In fact, Bournemouth morally won on XG 2 to 1.3, although that did include a penalty. But still, shows you the kind of haphazard nature of the game. Basically, Villa were absolutely brilliant. They basically out-Bournemouth.
What does that mean?
Well, it's sort of relentless pressure and counter-pressure, and just wouldn't let Bournemouth get out at all, and fullbacks overlapping. And, you need to match Bournemouth, physically and with pressure and intensity, which they absolutely did. So, it's not easy, sort of 2:00 on a Sunday, Bournemouth at home, for everyone to be up for it. But, they really were. The second goal sort of epitomised it. They won the ball from Bournemouth twice in 20 seconds in Bournemouth's half. And sort of Kamara, who was brilliant, and Onana both involved. And then Rodgers was very good. And then Onana sticks in a 20-yarder. Villa were perfect for sort of 20 minutes after that. And Bournemouth, they could have got back in the game in the second half. They had a really good spell after half-time at 2-0.
A penalty.
Hit the post. Won a penalty, which was brilliantly saved by Martinez from Semenyo. It was a great save. But, it's heading for the corner, and it's sort of full stretch, and he pushes it out. So it was a massive team effort from Villa, all the way from back to front. Martinez with a penalty save. The midfield were brilliant. And Ollie Watkins was given man of the match on TV.
Really?
Despite not scoring, he was just harassing and harrying Bournemouth constantly. So, and Austin McPhee, the set-piece coach, got an assist for 3 probably, because they work a lot on their direct free kicks, of which Emi Buendia scored a beaut. And then they scored brilliantly 2 corners in quick succession in the second half. The first one is a Ross Barkley header. The sort of 3 players are sort of running towards Luca Dean, who's taking an in-swinger, and then they turn back and head towards the 6-yard box, just to sort of move Bournemouth's players around. And then he knocks it on Barkley's head at the near post, 3-0.
Absolute classic McPhee.
Who can't celebrate properly at the moment because he's on crutches. So he's certainly not showing them how to do it on the training ground because he's very immobile. And anyway, the fourth one, it's Digne again, near side, in-swinging corner coming in. You're expecting something similar. Instead, he takes it short to Sancho, who pings it low across the edge of the box, and then Tielemans sort of knocks it from 20 yards and it's deflected in. So 2 completely different corners from the same taker on the same side, both resulting in a goal. It's pretty impressive. And as are Villa, who are up to 6th now, they were 7 points behind Bournemouth after Matchday 5, I think, and now they're above them in the table, level on points. So you've got to, they looked a bit ropey in the first few weeks. You've got to credit Emery for not letting things drift and keeping standards incredibly high. And, we talk about recruitment sort of resulting in good seasons for everyone. Well, their recruitment was pretty terrible and no new signings started in this game. And I think only, Sancho made a quick contribution off the bench, but hasn't done much else. So for a team whose recruitment wasn't very good in the summer, you've got to give enormous credit to the manager for getting Villa to the level that they're at, despite no new signings making an impact.
Indeed.
I mean, maybe Villa are the mysterious third title challenger that we were looking for.
Perhaps they are, Duncan.
Mm.
I was just noticing it is so tight in that zone of the table between indeed Chelsea in third spot and Crystal Palace in 10th. There's only 3 points. Effectively, all those teams could swap places with one game.
That's league football, baby. But there's something deeply satisfying about Bournemouth. The 9th to 12th is Bournemouth, Palace, Brighton, Brentford. And it's like, whatever's going on in the world, that's just right. So, yeah.
Speaking of Palace, Duncan, you and I both opted of the four to follow their clash with the 4 2:00 kickoffs to follow their clash with Brighton. And in terms of watching goals, it didn't work out for us. But what did we get from the experience?
Well, I thought it was quite a good game. Maybe I was just in a good mood.
It was super lively. I mean, the first half particularly.
First half was very transitional. Both teams, some really good build-up play. Both teams sort of struggled in the final third a little bit. But yeah, I thought it was good. It was just what you expect from the Classico de A23. A lot of pushing, a lot of shoving, a lot of minor skirmishing.
A lot of hard shoulders.
Yeah. A bit of peace pottage. But yeah, I mean, I guess the probably the most dramatic moment was Brian getting a penalty in the second half. But it was overturned correctly by the referee.
Right, yeah. That was the high point.
I'll tell you why it's the high point, because it allows you to then celebrate the performance of JD Camvo, who possibly the least heralded signing on transfer deadline day, although not by Tim Spiers, who regularly rates every signing from the summer. So, I mean, you'd have been all over
Did you rate JD Camvo?
It's sort of a real unknown, really. He hadn't played too much in France. I think was he 19?
He's 19, yeah.
Looks like the sort of long-term game replacement, but playing more than he would have expected. But I've not seen much of him yet. But obviously,
he came in. Gay sort of ruled out late on with injury, and yeah, tough game to come into for a young man. He came from Toulouse, and yeah, he was brilliant. Like he gave away the penalty and looked a bit nonplussed. Like normally you'd expect a player to be like, Ruter dived and say that to the ref, and he kind of just looked a bit sad. But then when they overturned it, he still looked a little bit confused, but obviously not in his first language. So, but yeah, overall, he really ruins the game. The 3 centre-backs in the Palace system are so key, and he's receiving the ball under pressure. And yeah, I thought it was really, really impressive.
By the way, Thursday night, Palace got their first ever victory in a European competition, beating AZ Alkmaar 3-1 in the Europa Conference League. They are only only goal difference outside the automatic qualifying spots in the orange-flavoured Europa competition. Now, winners of the Europa League last season were the winners of a game in May between Spurs and Man United. Those two teams met again this Saturday lunchtime. We'll conclude today by discussing events there next. We've done all the other games.
Talked about Fulham, but not really Everton.
We kind of, hinted that they played a game without necessarily getting into the details.
I could do a bit on Everton if you want.
We did mention that their game when we talked about. If you want, Daniel, I feel like we could just talk loads about Spurs Man United. Is there comms on this, Charlie?
Yeah, the Ligt equaliser.
Lovely. 96th minute. It's Ligt. We will have enjoyed that against the Tottenham side that so cruelly denied him and his Ajax teammates a place in the Champions League final all those years ago. This time earning Man United a point in a game that's, certainly happened on Saturday. The last bit was good. I'd say the last bit was really exciting. Daniel, what were your thoughts overall about this game? Also, which side do you think balls it up more? Man United, who allowed a completely confused and befuddled Spurs to come back into the game and actually take the lead, or Spurs, who only had one last corner to defend against 10 men and still didn't get that right?
Yeah, I think it's a split decision, a points decision. I think Man United balls it up more because from the moment at 1-0 when Spurs fans are booing their manager's substitutions and sort of implying that Frank doesn't know what he's doing. This is a manager who has, I think, picked 14 different starting attacking combinations in his first 18 games as Spurs manager. So maybe on some little level he doesn't quite know what he's doing yet with that squad. There was booing, which then came a week. I mean, that comes a week after the two of the players seemingly went straight down the tunnel and all that. It felt like Spurs could implode at that point, and all those Nuno comparisons that we heard last weekend started to sort of bubble up again. So I think Man United probably balls that up more, and I think they balls it up more because Manuel Ugarte is just absolutely not at it. I was looking back through it for the score that I write, and they've conceded 5 goals this season, Manchester United, with Casemiro on the pitch, and 15 without him on the pitch. And that's partly because he's been really good, but it's also because Ugarte has been routinely terrible for a £60 million player. And it kind of felt like, rather than booing Spurs subs, they should have been sort of cheering Manchester United's, because the game sort of turned on that, I think. Fair play to Manchester United for getting back into the game. It was poor defending. It was a kind of big moment. Narrative-wise, it keeps the kind of unbeaten run going. It means that Spurs haven't won at home. But yeah, I think Manchester United balls. They should have won that game. I think Spurs looked like idealless again at home until the goals. And it was Ugarte who I think pretty much made both mistakes. He plays with Richarlison onside. He loses Odegaard. And Spurs sort of got that lead by default and then lost it by default again.
Do you remember that old cartoon of a Dalek facing some stairs? That was Spurs in the first half, looking at Man United going, what do we do now? It was remarkable. And nothing came of it. As you say, Thomas Frank received a barrage of boos from the Spurs fans when he took off Xavi Simons and replaced him with Matthias Tell. But he was vindicated, because Tell, who's not had the greatest of starts for Spurs, scored a lovely equaliser. And it's actually the second time in 5 days I noticed that Spurs scored 2 goals after taking off Xavi Simons. So there you go, because the other goal then came in the 91st minute from Richarlison, who poignantly thought he'd won the game for Spurs, ripped off his shirt to celebrate, only to, of course, see Man United find an equaliser of their own a few moments later.
He's the first player in recorded Premier League history to have been booked for taking his shirt off in stoppage time and then seen his team concede after that. So it's a niche, special skill to have, but we all need one.
Yeah, he had a mixed game, Richarlison, as is often the case. So it's 171 days since that Europa League clash between the two teams. Is either of these two sides showing much progress? Which one do you think's looking like they're heading in the right direction more?
I think there's more negativity around both of them than you would expect for the improvements they've made since not so long ago. It's just for Spurs to go from 17th to 5th. And for there to be all this chat about how Thomas Frank's getting it wrong. And yeah, he made a couple of poor calls at the weekend. I think dropping Udogie, I'm not sure why that happened, but that was especially after the performance against Copenhagen in midweek. To change the left side, which had been so good, was a pretty obvious error. It's obviously a mental issue for Spurs at this point. I don't really see how else you can look at it. The last 21 home games in the Premier League, they've lost 13. Coming off the back of that Champions League win, Man United at home, big game on a Saturday, to produce 3 touches in the opposition box in the first 45 minutes is just crazy. And no shots on target, XG 0.07. If you don't sort that home record out, you're gonna head towards mid-table, I think. But there's certainly more encouragement than we saw from them last season. So I don't really understand why it's so negative around Spurs. But then I'm not a Spurs fan.
I guess because if you are a Spurs fan and you watch that first half, where they are just standing looking at the Man United defenders going, now what? Who are these people standing in the way?
Yeah, and I think some clubs are happy with wins, aren't they? That I think clubs sometimes like Chelsea, they just need to win games. Whereas I think Spurs are like, they need to win games in a certain manner.
Right. This wasn't a win or a game in a certain manner.
No. But this is built up across the season. Particularly, we've seen before there's Premier League teams who are good away from home but poor at home, and that's not a good scenario to be in because most the match-going fans, obviously see you in the home games. That's logical. So,
but then Newcastle fans aren't happy either.
No, but I think they've got higher, loftier ambitions at the moment.
Right.
And to Tim's point, Spurs had the worst record of any non-relegated team in a 20-team Premier League season ever last season in terms of defeats, and they're kind of doing all right, but they need to kind of they need to do sort of PR campaign in the sense of, as we said on Thursday, like play some through balls, have some, getting above 1xG, that old chestnut, people, fathers and sons and mothers and daughters walking to games with the old wireless radio. We just want to get over 1xG this afternoon, but they're not doing that.
As for United, they keep their unbeaten run under Ruben Amorim going. That's now up to 5 matches. And it's the third away game in a row where they scored a late result-altering goal, which presumably brings a bit of positivity, Daniel?
Yeah, it's an odd one, that, because there's certainly ingredients there, but there are such obvious high points and flaws within the same team and with the same performances that it's kind of hard to know what to think about it. So, like, Brian Mbeumo has been excellent this season. I think Matthias de Ligt and Casemiro have been excellent. There's a sort of spine there. Bruno Fernandes has been good as ever. And yet there are such obvious flaws in the team that you still can't quite see working. So, like, I still don't see Amad Diallo really working as a wing-back. I still don't think Ugarte is good enough, so they have to play Casemiro every minute, and they can't play Casemiro every minute. I don't think Benjamin Sesko's particularly good, to be honest. I mean, he's certainly raw. Like, needs to improve would be the kind of generous assessment. I know he went off injured, but I'm just not seeing that at all. So it doesn't kind of suggest that there's this grand master plan on and off the pitch slowly coming together, to my mind. It's just that they've bought some very good players, and they had some very good players, and that is making them look better than they were, and they should be better than they were. It was a low bar last season, incredibly low bar. So, yeah, I can't really work them out. There's basically about 12 teams in the Premier League now where I'm like, ask me again in a month, which I know is not ideal for a weekly podcast about the Premier League, but that is sort of where we're at. We talked about the league table at the start of the season. It's like, Tim said Forest fans are happier in 19th than Newcastle fans are in 12th, or Spurs fans are in 5th. And it does feel like that. It's so bunched up, and you can be like, how as football fans, we never judge how many points our team's got. We judge about where they are in the league. So when you're only 3 points ahead of 14th and you're 5th, it's really hard to know how to react to that, because you know that in 2 weeks you might be 14th, and then you are allowed to be angry.
I think we can see this in quite a few of the EFL divisions as well this season. There's very bunched divisions, and if you look at sort of the underlying numbers, there's teams at the top you'd expect to fall away and teams at the bottom you expect to rise. But we live in this kind of world where every week is either a disaster. Our transfer window was a disgrace. Our manager just doesn't get it anymore. The players don't care. Or the following week you win, and it's like, we're on the rise here. This is a promotion or championship. I think in the Premier League, Wolves are bad, and Arsenal, although maybe not as bad as we think, and then Arsenal and Man City are good. And that's kind of where we were a couple of seasons ago.
All right.
So, yeah.
Take that thought into the international break, which now envelops us. Final round of World Cup qualifying, final break for World Cup qualifying for those Euro hopefuls. We're getting into what awaits in Thursday's Totally Football Show, and maybe we'll touch on it a little bit in our Tuesday European edition too. But that is where we come to an end for tonight's show. So many thanks for following us if you did on YouTube, or giving us a listen via podcast. Many thanks to Daniel Storey for bringing words of wisdom as ever. To Tim Spiers, Duncan Alexander, Jake and Charlie in the booth. And you, wherever you may be, have a great international break. Keep it totally. And for now, from all of us here, it's goodbye.